Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Dabney. I'm here with Denise Polba. We are COLAS, caregivers of loved ones with aggression and self-injury. Today, we are very privileged to have Kim Stoeffler with us. I actually met Kim at a special needs expo. Um, Kim has a business, Kim's Kids. She's an IEP coach and advocate. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
For starters, what does an IEP coach do, and what can a parent expect from a session with you?
We do. We offer support, encouragement, resources, directions in the IDEA law, policies and procedures manual, parent safeguards manual. You know, a shoulder sometimes, seriously, a shoulder sometimes, because I have the empathetic gift, curse, however you want to look at it. So sometimes when they call, I immediately can sense, where they're at. And, sometimes I feel the heart, the gut punch or the heart crushing and, just kind of lift them up. And sometimes just tell them, breathe. Okay, I'll just listen. If I need to sit here and listen to you cry, I'll sit, but I will more than likely cry with you. I might weep a little bit. Nobody cries alone in my circle. But what they need at the moment, and as an advocate, is to search, utilize, go through my memory bank, go to my resources, whether it be other parents in the community, other support networks that I have, resources. One of my biggest champions and mentors, I have gotten a wealth of knowledge from Catherine Michael. She's a practicing attorney here in Indiana. She is a nationally known special needs attorney, and she has been a wealth of knowledge. She practices law in about 5 different states, but is so beyond comprehension, known for her passion, beliefs, and just knowing the law and to try and help everybody. And I look at the IEPs. You ask me, I ask if, do they have a current IEP? So I can look at it. And I ask, do you need me to look over the current one? Do you need me to do a deep dive into all of them, looking at their diagnosis? Because there could be something in their diagnosis and recommendations from the doctors that hasn't been folded in yet. And thinking outside the box. Oh my gosh, if my kiddo has not taught me anything, it is thinking outside of the box. And that's very instinctive for me. I have worked with children for 25 plus years. So it's nothing for me to spew out 2, 3 different alternatives than the norm, because a lot of times that's my norm. Or, have you tried that? With some of the kids in the past, they have food aversions. Have you tried food chaining? And, we had to try it. All of a sudden, our kiddos ate anything and everything. And we had to take the baby steps through baby food. Now, this is a peach. This is different things we make with peaches. So that's just an example of thinking outside of the box, or this is what a peach feels like. Just a wide gambit of stuff. And, my tools a lot of times are the IDEA law, and then the Indiana rules and regulations and guidelines for special need kiddos. And you can go to indianagov.org and look it up. It's right there. You can download it. You can highlight it even, and you can search. There's a search engine. Say you want to look for meals, just put meals in there. If you want to look for accommodations, you're going to get a lot of hits. So then you have to do a lot. But, one or two keywords, it'll do the search for you, and then you can look at it. You can do with the technology now, you can put your items, correspondence, or what have you from the teachers, and you can screenshot and make a digital file on your laptop instead of saving all those emails. You can move it digitally over to, and I do it by school year. So there are so many different, even shortcuts for parents, because we get such little time to do it, let alone a deep dive. There are so many little nuggets that you can do to help save you when you need that moment. Oh, I just need to go to my file instead of having your whole computer. You can look at something like that. So kids are my passion. They always have been. I mean, I eat, breathe, and sleep kids. So I don't mind talking to strangers, or, even typical moms, dads need help, or when you're at the supermarket and you see somebody, an adult with a child having a meltdown, have some compassion. Maybe the mom needs to walk away for a second and the child could care less. And you're like, Mom, just breathe. I'll sit here with you. I'll sit here with them. I've sat on the floor at the grocery store with people before. Maybe mom said you can't have that. And you're trying to say, oh, would you like to hold this for a minute or help mom? And maybe mom just took it away. You just don't know what you're walking into. But sometimes people just need compassion. Compassion is out the door. And, that to me, that is just should be human nature, but it's been lost. But it's been lost.
Yeah.
I can hear and feel your compassion. I mean, I can, and your passion.
Yes.
It is really beautiful. What inspired you to become a coach?
I grew up with, unbeknownst to me initially, a special needs sibling. She had ADHD. And you know what? And back in the day, meds did not help her. The chemistry of her body did not help her. She struggled in school. She was a dropout. Other siblings struggled to read. And then I became a babysitter initially, very early on. And I had SPED kids back then. They've never intimidated me. Never. I have had verbal, nonverbal, and we're talking not even out of high school. I had a bedridden kiddo. I had a wheelchair-bound kiddo. In elementary school, as early as third or fourth grade, that's when they started to mainstream some of the kids. They were my friends. I was their caretaker then, and I was a child. But I have always had that mommy or nurturing gene that I was always all inclusive. I didn't care. I didn't care about their ability or inability, their skin color, their religion. You want to be my friend? Be my friend. And you know what? If you don't want to play with the tools in my toy box, okay, don't play with the tools in my toy box or the toys in my toy box. What's in your toy box? It just, just decency. Just decency.
It's how you're wired, I can tell.
It really is. And then fast forward, a little background, I ran a daycare for 25 years, and I had some special need kiddos in there. It was nothing to have a nurse come in, therapists come in during that time frame. So I learned from that. And then I nannied part-time after hours. So I've had diabetic children, heart monitors, feeding tubes, all of that. So I have never shied away. If the parents could teach me and educate me to their comfort level, or I have friends that are nurses, a lot of friends that are nurses, worked with burn patients. My daughter is a burn survivor as well as as special needs. So I have helped any number of children that have been burnt, and Riley kids. I know a lot of Riley staff as a result of just crossing paths with people. So I've helped and worked with any kind. I just don't shy away from it. And, aggression, my kid's been there, folks. We have to make sure, and we're blessed. Some nights I'm ready to pull my hair out just like everybody else. And it's like, I need to give myself the time out. We can't always give them the time out. We need our time away too. And she's older now and developed some tools, but other times we're right back and we got to do a reset. And that's a basketball term. When she was in special needs basketball, reset. And I'm like, I need a reset, or we need a reset. And we've used that phrase for a long time and doing different therapies. And she might get annoyed at when I'll say one of the phrases, and, it's like the eye roll and everything. And I don't know, there's some medication she has to take, and we hadn't talked about that. So forgive me if this is a do or don't, but we have to at times. And that's for the sanity and welfare of all of us. Do I want to call the authorities because of it? That's a fright and a reality for some parents. And that's a scary thought to have to go through your mind. Do you need to have your child have different placement? As heart crushing as that is, sometimes the reality is, to survive, we may have to look at that. And that's not why we became a parent. I understand that. And especially if you have other littles in the house, or other children, or a spouse that, you birthed this baby and you've birthed other babies and they all have your heart, but you've got to put all the priorities. And, those priorities change in half a heart. It can change in a half a heartbeat. It really, honestly, it can. In a half a heartbeat, it can go from a non-emergency to emergency. You're number one. And so there are times that we have to revert to what I call, quote unquote, the emergency medicine, and just go that route. I'd rather do that than have to call the authorities. But if one has to, then one has to. I mean, if they're going to do harm to themselves, or your spouse, or even animals, guys, look at how many animals are involved in this. We don't want them to harm themselves or anybody else. So a lot of self-reflection and examination, and what do we do? What do we do? And have an emergency plan. If this comes up, I have folders with like different color codes. A red one, it's emergency, pull it out. My daughter's medical log is color coded, depending on what it is. If it was insomnia, then it was brown. Don't ask me why I picked brown. I must have used a whole lot of other colors that didn't show up. If it was meds related, then it was red. If it was, something else, it was purple. So that if I needed to, then I just went to that section. So I had an ongoing rolling diary of what happened. And now with laptops, you can dictate it in. Oh my gosh, I would be in trouble. I mean, I can think quicker than I can talk. And dictating, it may not read right if you go back and proofread it, but sometimes at least you have your thoughts out in a formula and can grab and go. And you may have to have two binders, one at home with your list of meds and one in your vehicle. Because sometimes what if you're not home? And what if you ask, what medications are you on? Or if you have guardianship, have that in there, a copy of it in there. And I work with guardianships, encouraging, through the encouragement and mentorship of Catherine Michael. My kiddo was aging toward the point where we had to get guardianship. She was going to be turning 18. And she's like, Kim, you can do this. I'm sure you can. And I really, really procrastinated. I try not to be a procrastinator. The more seasoned I get, the more of a procrastinator I become. I hate to admit that. But I was just so intimidated by those forms. And I just then took it up to the courthouse and had to let them look it over before I filed it. And she's like, no, you need to correct this. And then I just came home and corrected it. It was saved on my laptop and just went back and filed it. And as daunting as I thought it was, don't get me wrong, in the reality that you have to do it for their own well-being, because a lot of people don't know once they turn 18 and have an emergency, you have no say, no say whatsoever. That if the child is having a bad day and doesn't want you in that doctor's office or emergency room, then they're the one making the calls for your child. And do you want that? So I filed it and it went through. We had the waiting period for the court appearance, and we went before the judge, and it was easy peasy. Sworn in, questioned myself, my husband, my daughter, in and done in 15 minutes, literally done in 15 minutes. And you know what? He thanked me. He thanked me for taking on that role as a parent. And there's others I'd love to. I mean, if I could open a home, I would. My husband, I couldn't mentality wise. There wouldn't be enough love in this mama's heart for all of them and my sanity and my. But would I open a home younger days? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've been through the guardianship twice, and I didn't. It is amazing how short the actual hearing is, because you have to get so much, set up and everything, and then it's just like you get in there, and then it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's like that's all there is.
Yeah.
And so I was astonished. I was astonished when she said, "You can do this." I'm like, "No, I can't. No, yeah, I can't." It's all that self-talk that they teach the kids, the self-talk. We do it all the time. At least I do it. It's like, yeah, it's part of the sanity and self-care too. Self-talk.
So speaking for myself, I know you kind of touched on the procedural safeguards and all that you get at the IEP meetings that everybody has like stacks and stacks of. Speaking for myself, I can say that I have been given those many, many times and haven't thoroughly gone through it. So how did you become so knowledgeable in them?
Because my child suffered some consequences as a result of signing that paper that you really don't know what is all in that. They could call the authorities at school, and legal charges can be filed for some of my clients. And you know what? If your kiddo has an IEP, if it is shared with the county, it may not go so far. And legally, the school system should be sharing this when they call the authorities.
Wow.
I saw a aha moment with you, Denise. Yes.
Well,
yes.
It's interesting. I don't think a lot of parents know their rights.
No.
Their child.
And it's frightening because you look at the school as professionals and that they have the child's best interest at heart. And don't get me wrong, you read me. There are people out there that would do anything for our kids. And you've probably had umpteen ones cross your path. But there's others that don't. And the school system has a system in place purposely to protect them as well. And they know loopholes. They know just enough information to not share with you that you should, or they'll just give you the paper and say, here, sign this. And you don't know what you may or may not be signing away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is really critical when we're talking about our aggressing kids and everything. And Give them a safe place if they need to go to the calming room. A school, if ask your school for a calming room, get other parents together, like-minded parents, and ask for a calming room. Sometimes all they need to do is go get, some of them may just need to walk away and get a drink of water, or go down and sit in their resource room where they feel safe. And some resource rooms have the little room that's more quiet, that, okay, go sit on the pillows on the floor in there and just chill for a little while. Or it may be, do you need to just carry something heavy down to the office with a buddy just to get out of the room? And the parents, the teachers should be able to recognize when your child is on the verge of this, if they're in tune with your kiddo after a while. Mm-hmm. If it's the first day of school, but come on, if it's 3 months later and they've had a pattern, it's like, okay, we're getting ready. And it's kind of like the mountain. And you want to catch them like way down here. Get it diffused way down here before you're approaching the top of the mountain. Maybe have some cars, or work with the parents. What's a favorite thing, or do they need to color, or whatever, to help before they get to that top of that mountain with anger or rage or frustration because they can't do the work sometimes. They'll check out. They can see when the kid is starting to check out. There's some things they can do. Some people call it a hot pass. Some schools give it a fuzzy name, and I'm not opposed to that, because the kiddos, as they get older, they're self-aware. They don't want to be embarrassed. It's like, oh, can you take this folder down too, and let them do, or hey, so-and-so and so-and-so, have a peer friend in the class. Some students have compassion like I did. Say, Johnny, do you mind walking Joe? Can you buddies take this down to the library or something? There's different ways that they can assist in the situation. And then I know some kids are, God love them, they just can't be quiet in class, or they cannot stay off their laptops. Ladies, do you know the school systems have the abilities to turn the internet off on laptops? That was not offered until at least 3 years ago, until I became aware of that. And I'm like, this child has impulse control, or will get on their laptop and start talking and get mad at, they're trying to game. These kids find games that the school is shut off on their laptops. So that can be shut off. The drawback is, if it's shut off there, if they bring said laptop home, it's shut off at home too. Then the parents have to have a means for the student to gain access to the internet if they have to research. It's a weight and scale. I personally, if the parents can have a laptop at home for that, then have a laptop at home. At school, the resource teacher, some schools, depending on the school, they have an iPad. Some, it's the teacher's iPads. I didn't know that at first. I'm like, a student came back, the mom came back and said, my child said the laptop wasn't charged. Well, my child gets a detention if her laptop isn't charged. Why is that classroom laptop not charged? You have a cord there, plug it in. But yeah, they can shut off the internet to the kids that are impulsive and get on the laptop and get heated over whatever's on the laptop. So that's just a nugget.
So you, I love listening to all your possible suggestions of different things that we can do, and just options, to work through issues. What areas do you serve? like geographical areas? Could you just step me, like, who do you work for and what areas do you serve?
You know, the law's the law. So there are no geographic boundaries for me.
Okay.
So that, and then when it comes to by state, a lot of them are so comparable that you can relate to the situation. Um, so, so as long as I have their school policies and procedures, I can look through that, or their
Okay.
handbook. Their handbook is a wealth of knowledge. A lot of times they're like the first day of school, they'll have the kiddos sign, I've read the handbook. Okay, my child has an IQ of XYZ.
Right.
And they're being accountable for reading said handbook. Well, I read it to them. Again, my child or my student has an IQ of, and you read this handbook and they signed it, they are knowledgeable and know what's in that handbook. And I'm a codes person. I open that book up, and if somebody's bullied, do an investigation according to your handbook, code number, yada, 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 point, yada, yada, yada. Do an investigation.
So Kim, do you have your own, is this like a business for you? Is this a mission? Is this a passion? And if somebody wanted to, where do you get your referrals from, I guess, too?
Word of mouth,
Okay.
expos, fairs like we met at. You know what? We can be in at the library, at the grocery store. Our kids kind of draw to each other at times, or the parents. You could be out and you can get a look from a parent, and you're like, oh, that look.
Yeah.
So it can be any one of those. So there's no real geographic boundaries for me, because a lot of it deals with the ideal law. And there's
Right.
sticking away from that. And that's what a lot of the policies and procedures are too.
Right.
Schools devise their own, don't get me wrong. They kind of, but if they change their handbook from the law, they are in breach of the law too.
Uh-huh.
So you have to watch that. It might be their interpretation or how, as a parent, it's interpreted, but you can't change what's in the idea law. So ultimately, that's going to trump any handbook,
Right.
and state book. So what kind of people and families do I help? I love my little, I apologize.
That's okay. We don't mind.
I don't shy away from anything. And if I don't know, then, or if it's outside my realm, then I will say, this is outside my realm. I'm very transparent too. I don't want to steer you wrong. I would encourage you to talk to XYZ person. Or if it's a legal matter, then this is beyond, and they've already broken countless laws, that then you just need to go straight the attorney. Advocate it's above an advocate's grade. To protect your child, you need to go straight to the attorney. And that's just something after a while that, I might want to help a family, but then I get into it, or I hear it from the get-go. I'm like, oh, hun, you do need to reach out to an attorney for this matter, because an advocate, my role as an advocate is to make sure that they're getting the accommodations, the modifications, different tools and stuff to help the family, so that the child does ascertain the tools that they need to continue their education, live independently, and gainfully employed. And that's the whole thing behind the IDEA Act. What that looks like for a child might be residential. It might be short-term. It might be long-term. What does it look like for their education? Are we looking at voc rehab? Are we looking at getting a certification? Are we looking at going straight from school into a job through Voc Rehab or on their own but for just a little bit of hours. It just depends on the individual. The I in IEP is so misconstrued that it is individualized. It's not cookie cutter. And so many of the IEPs are cookie cutter. The child's name is different on everyone. I've seen IEPs that have had other students. I've received IEPs that should have been for my child that was somebody else's. And I'm like, this does not belong to me. And just forward it back and then delete it on my end. It's not my business. And we make human error. I don't get upset with, a teacher or somebody that sends me that, or you get them that say he, and it's a son. But they're so cookie. Why does it say that in there? If this is individualized, why does it say that in there?
Right.
Or
Right.
that my child didn't do this, and they'll have a whole paragraph on a scenario. No, this is not me. You must have my child confused with else. But what
are some of the most common issues you see now let's just use the state of Indiana. What do you see the most in the state of Indiana right now? Issues?
Not having adequate accommodations and modifications and then following them. Hands down.
Can you give like an example, like exact example?
Small groups. Small groups. A lot of these kiddos don't thrive, or they need to have the reteach method. In elementary school, they call it the reteach. You take them out and you reteach it. And the small group, so that they get embarrassed just like we do. We all have little situations. I don't care if you're a public speaker or not. You still have certain situations you get embarrassed. And the kiddos are the same way. Reteach them. If they don't get the fundamentals, how are they going to build upon anything if they don't get the fundamentals? Now, don't get me wrong. Pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters. We use debit cards. If our kiddos, I keep saying don't get me wrong, because there's always the unique situation, because it's individualized. But if you're in 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade and your kiddo has not gotten pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, I want to make sure that my child can add and subtract. I do not care about fractions. I do not care about decimal points. I do not care about those things. Can they go to the grocery store with me and go 10 feet down the aisle? Can you grab me the box of your favorite cereal? Can you grab me an apple? Do you see any fruit that you like? Help them build upon their life skills. And their life skills are different as well. And then there's the diploma bound kids. Some are off diploma bound. You know what? Then you need to teach them the life skills for non-diploma bound. Are they going to be able to recite poetry?
Right. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that.
About Macbeth?
Right.
Sorry.
Right. Almost. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Almost for a typical kid too. There's certain stuff. Okay. Yeah. I think they need to revamp our system across the board.
But the accommodations and modifications, hands down. And one nugget, because I know it's summertime, parents think the summer off, I can breathe. You know what? This is the time to dig in and have somebody look at your IEP. You have your IEP annually. Many folks don't know you can call or reconvene as many times as you need, and you can modify that IEP as necessary. Goals are met. Some are long-term goals, some are short-term goals. If goals are met, then a new goal needs to be put in place and the placements put there. And then who is collecting the data for this? You want to know who, when, and why, and in what form. And for me personally, for my clients, I want them to look at eyes on 5 times. These kiddos have off days. Look at the kids that we're looking at. They have off. They have off days. Middle name works for dogs too. Yep, she just went to her middle. What was I saying, ladies?
They have off days.
They all have an off day, just like we do. Don't look at my child once in a grading period. I want them looked at 5 times. 5 times. And that's the data that needs to be put together, not that one time.
It's so interesting. This is off topic because I want to make sure we stay on our thing, but it often surprises me how many, looking at our group of young people, it often surprises me how many do not have a behavioral support plan despite having aggressive and self-injurious behavior. Oftentimes they don't. Yeah,
the parent needs to request it and be firm about it. And parents need to be in tune, because this is a method in which it can fall through the cracks, or it can be intentionally overlooked. Every child should be reevaluated every 3 years, folks. Every 3 years. Guaranteed every 3 years. At which point, or any point, a parent can say, you want a full evaluation, intellectually, everything. And they can't be denied. Put it in writing. And if I can impress upon the parents, put everything in writing. Document, document, document. If you have a phone call, Mrs. Smith, teacher, Mrs. Smith, this is what we just discussed. Am I understanding this correctly? If I'm incorrect in any of this, please let me know via the email so that I know, so that I have my mind. Then you have your paper trail right there. I carbon copy in, and it's known right there. The teacher of record, the vice principal, and principal, depending on the subject matter. And sometimes I don't care what the subject matter is. I still will include those people, because teachers get busy, but you should have an email or a courtesy call back, is that if that's the preferred method of correspondence. You should hear back within 48 hours at the most. Falling on deaf's ear for 3, 6, 9 days or weeks, no, does not cut it. Right. No, that's where you've got to put on the armor and say no. And then that is when I will forward it to maybe the teacher, because you don't want to go in aggressively. You don't, but you have to go in with your standards and expectations and stand on them for your child. But now is the time to dig into that and do a letter of introduction at the start of the school year. Teachers sometimes do not know, if we're talking certain schools, who their student body is until the night before. I have teacher friends as well. They don't know who's going to be in their class the first day of school.
Right.
And they get the folder for each student, but who's to say that teacher does not have time to look at every folder for every child? And so I do a letter of introduction, and sometimes it takes some digging. Don't get me wrong. You don't have the email the first day in the directory. Sometimes they're not, or they're a new teacher, or you're a new parent to your child has moved up. They are now in middle school. You don't know how to navigate the computer system. I call the office. What is the email address too.
Mhm.
And then it's the same letter, but I send it so that they have to do return receipt. So then I've got it time stamped that they have received it. And it indicates that my child has an IEP. You may want to pull the file. And they have accommodations and modifications. And I do hyperlinks if need be. And I give suggestions, and I give a little bio of my child, or what can diffuse my child, what my child likes, topics if you want to start a relationship with my child. Some teachers don't even want the relationships with our kids, but some people do. So I give them that,
Yeah, that's awesome. So because I think we could probably have a couple interviews with you regarding different topics, because now my mind is, and I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes myself, because I'm like, well, what's the, but so specifically COLAS is for young people with aggressive and self-injurious behaviors. That probably some of the issues are schools calling parents and saying, pick up your kid, pick up your kid. If you were, what would be 3 things that you would want a parent to have on that IEP for young people with these type of behaviors?
I would say, have you worked through the rules and the accommodations and modifications? Have you had the conversation, or did you recognize it? Did you see it before it escalated? So a lot of kids find attachment to a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ask Johnny if he wanted to go visit? And it could be a janitorial person who's moving.
Mm-hmm.
Did you send Johnny? Did you ask him if he wanted to go to the library? Or did you ask Johnny, did he want to go to the resource room to just kind of chill? And it could be the office staff.
How would you put that on? How would you put that on the IEP? Like specifically, if a parent was saying, if you were talking to a parent and they were saying, Kim, tell me 3 things I need written on my IEP. How would you put that on their IEP?
I would make sure that the BIP plan is in there. Are you following the behavior plan?
Okay.
And they have to do, there are certain things about, you can't just expel a child. Have they done in-house detention? Is it something that is worthy of a detention because of the given nature of our student?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's not. That's where grace needs to be given. Write it in there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go straight to expelling one because they were yelling in class or cursing in class. If they hit a wall, they hit a wall. Did they damage anything? No, they may have hurt their hand.
Uh-huh.
I understand they may not be role models, but you can write that in the accommodations that, they can be excused. They can hot pass. They can have their hot pass to get out of class. Because it could be the pressure cooker right there. Reduced homework. A lot of times it's homework driven, or they don't understand it, or somebody scribed for them.
Mm-hmm.
It could be in there for their behavior. They get all upset because they don't have teacher's notes. Ask for teacher's notes.
Mm-hmm.
All these can be put in there.
Right. So those specifics are so important, because like you said, IEPs have a tendency towards generalization. So
yes.
So a BSP plan, a plan for when poor behavior does happen in terms of how to de-escalate it before expulsion or suspension. And then one more that you said, and I don't know.
The hot pass.
Hot pass, like have a hot pass option.
That is a given. That is a given. But I don't care if they're in elementary school or high school. Mm-hmm. Hot pass. That is It's not a get out of jail free card, but that is a visible sign, even to a substitute, folks. How many of our kiddos get in trouble when there's a substitute?
Mhm.
Right.
So
My daughter always
Yeah.
liked to test the substitute.
Mhm.
a kid can't always say that they have an IEP, or the teacher doesn't know that they're going to be gone, but a teacher has a thing in their desk or place someplace for a substitute, but the substitute may be running in last minute because they got the last minute call in their
Right.
class and don't know in the class that they have a child with a behavioral issue. They may have somebody with autism, or they may have somebody that they have ADHD, and they're used to. I don't want to desensitize ADHD.
Mhm.
Be accustomed to that. But some of these kids, before they get to the aggressive state, the ADHD is the foundation of a lot of stuff, because a lot of the ADHD kids are going to get there too if their needs aren't met. So if as the student gets older, if they're cognitive, or charge the teacher of record, maybe. And again, this is just me thinking outside the box, and this is how I do it.
Yeah.
Charge the teacher of record. You know that Johnny has these tendencies, or Sally has these tendencies. I haven't tested this one, but in the IEP, even in the parent notes, in the parent statement section, we could do a discussion about that, because a lot of parents don't know what to put in the parent statement.
Yeah.
Their loss. We can do like a formula to kind of walk parents through what are your top XYZ things, categories, but charge the teacher of record, and they may be gone. It could be cold and flu season, or the tummy bug flu season that, it's taken masses out, but charge them or have a backup. It's just like when the nurse isn't there, who's going to pass out the medications? They
Right.
have, and we as parents know, you don't have just plan A and B. You have A, B, C, D, E, and F on most
Right.
days. So
Right.
if you hear about it, and we don't until we get the phone call a lot of times about a behavior, well, the teacher wasn't there today. Well, that perpetuated the whole situation. The rest of the class was acting up, or they were louder than normal because they had a substitute. But if you have a kiddo that can do it, then have the kiddo, even if it's a folder, or tell the substitute, I have an IEP. That's all they need to say. Is how many other people in the class have an IEP?
Right.
And just say, I have an IEP. And, or in their binder, have like the red folder, the color code system, have the red folder so said student can give it to the substitute. But make sure they get it back. But have that. Or, again, just thinking outside the box. And parents, if you're called and you have a behavior plan and they want you to come pick your child up, then you say, are you suspending my child? And they're like, no, Mrs. Smith, we're not suspending Johnny. Then why are you having me pick him up? He needs to be in school to get his education for future employment, education, and independent living. No, I will not be picking Johnny up.
Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Smith, we really do. No, are you going to have the suspension papers for me to pick? That's not grounds for suspension many a times. They're just having their moment.
Yeah.
So do not. That is against the child's rights. You as their cheerleader, that is their right to be there in school.
Right.
And they're governmentally funded. They have, okay, I'm going to drop this bombshell. For a diagnosis, schools get money, folks.
Yeah.
Every single diagnosis. Parents, if your child is lining up, if your child is, you see the kids at the nurse's office lining up for their ADHD medicine, and if they're there for their diabetic injections or so on and so forth, schools get money for your child's diagnosis. When they say they do not have the funds, they received the funds for your child and their diagnosis. Don't misappropriate the funds that you were given to take care of my child.
Right. I agree. I agree. I mean, yeah, I often wonder, and I know that teachers are under assisted in the classroom 100%. But I often wonder, where the funds are going for all these diagnoses, and
Right.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. When they say that, they have money for big football stadiums. They have money for the students that excel to do different stuff. You need to allocate the money to close the gap that my child has.
Right.
To receive their education, independent living, and employment.
Right.
That is what you're charged with. That is part of why you went into education. Right. And I'm a teacher at heart. Teacher at heart. That's why you went in it. I'm just asking you to do what you're responsible for doing. And I will be holding you accountable for that responsibility.
Right.
So please do so.
Yeah. I actually talked to Denise a little bit before we started the interview that I've actually been very fortunate to have a lot of very passionate, very good teachers. So, but I am aware, like with the support group that we run, that there are issues, not everybody's so lucky. So most of us want to work with our schools to help our kids, and we don't want to feel like we're just constantly at battle. So when we are faced with a situation where there's a disagreement or someone's not getting what they need or what they were promised, how should parents address the schools and still keep that healthy, cohesive relationship?
A lot of times there's a certain timeline. If you're asking for an evaluation, the school has to respond within 10 days. Just respond and get you the paperwork to sign. And then they have the infamous 50 days school calendar days to do the evaluations. If they're out of compliance, just say, I live by my calendar. We're getting close to the end. Where's my paperwork? Where's the documentation? When can I anticipate? And sometimes they've already started the testing and they haven't told me. Write in your IEP nugget, write in your IEP that you want to know when your child is being tested. Because you as a parent may want to go above and beyond. They may go to bed at their normal bedtime. You may want to get them in bed half hour early and them not know it. Stuff them like it's Thanksgiving so they have a full belly and they get that in so that they want to go to bed and get a great night's sleep. Because sometimes, brother may have had a baseball game the night before and you ran through and grabbed fast food that wasn't a nutritious meal, but it's your go-to and you have other family members and that was your go-to. You need to know so that you can have your child equipped for these tests as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Just like, would you recommend I mean, we've talked about the paper trail, so probably put it in an email or something.
Oh, absolutely. All emails. And then if they go outside of that, you may want to give them a nudge. But if it becomes habitual, then go to your Department of Education and file a complaint against them, because then the school is notified that there is a formal complaint. And you can even say that in the email. Hey, this is the second request, and you're now 16 days out of compliance. That's a key word to use, out of compliance. Sometimes your words indicate you know more than the average bear. And sometimes you don't know more, but you know some keywords. Compliance.
Yeah.
And if need be, I will file a complaint with the Department of Education. Parents don't know that phrase. Or I will be calling the Department of Education and get clarity on this. Say that, call them. They're there. But it's also the fox guarding the hen house, because schools answer to the Department of Education. But if it's idea laws, there's some things you don't get around.
Right.
So, and if there's enough complaints, they track all that. If there's enough complaints, about the same thing, then they have the trail and the data right there. I know school systems that have a lot of paper trails. So that is key. Know when they're out of know your dates. Set your calendar. Unfortunately, we have to set it for therapy sessions. We have to set it for doctor's appointments, for inoculations, meds and meds refills, and all that. So our calendars, we have to live by our calendars. So I do the 6 weeks, I do the 2 weeks, I do the 5 day, and then I just start the countdown depending on the severity of something. It can be a matter of, I've got 18 hours to do something. I've got 6 hours. I've got 30 minutes. And for some of us, I've got 5 minutes to get this done. And set your reminders and your stuff, but hold them accountable, use your terms, and make sure that you have your paper trail, because you can't have he said, she said, they said, we said. Have your paper. All in your kiddo's best interest. Sanity. Honestly, your sanity too. We wear every hat. We're the doctor, the lawyer, the Indian chief, the nurse, the baker, the candlestick baker. So it's really for your sanity at times.
And even maybe reaching out beforehand and just being like, hey, it's been this long. I know we're kind of coming up on that time, just to kind of keep it a little more friendly and stuff like that.
I always start on the friendly terms. Say, hey, we're at 2 years, and you'll know that you diary the date, folks. April will be should be the 3-year evaluation, and just wanted to make sure you're getting the ball rolling. Start with kindness. Kindness gets you so far. You want to go to the other levels when need be. You don't want to start here, just like we don't want to start our kids to start here. So kindness, be kind. I mean, I'm not always Mama Bear, but when I walk in the door, the front office knows me. I'm there to whether it be for an IEP meeting, or I'm there enough in certain school systems that they know me, or they know my reputation, that, oh, Kim Stoeffler is going to be here of Kim's Kids IEP. We need to have all of our ducks in a row, because she's going to be asking for these things. Certain things, like small groups, the hot pass, you should get parents, you should get your, for the older kids, you should get your quarterly reports for all your kids. Know how and look at your reports. If you don't have your progress reports to look at, how are you going to know your kiddo is struggling in certain areas? If the teachers aren't conveying it. Don't tell me at the end of the grading period, my child is failing, when we could have put other measures in place during this period, or I as a parent could have gotten more therapy sessions, had one, we call them family meetings at our house. It's nothing good or bad. We talk about anything and everything. We ask our sped kiddo, do you have anything you want to talk about? Is there anything bothering you, irritating you? What do you want to eat this week? Start family meetings in the home. A lot of things start at home, folks.
Yeah.
So, ask your kiddo, how was their day to day? Did anybody bully you? Sometimes these things start the even the self-injury and the aggression because they're bullied and we don't know it. It could be subtle. If they have typical friends have called me and said, Miss Kim, they were picking on my child at lunch today, and she didn't even know it. And that is really heartwarming when other students have your child's back and will stand for your child. That was a pat question for many years. When my child got home, they need to decompress. They don't need those 20 questions, give them their half hour. But, okay, how was your day? What did you have if you don't pack lunch? Or what did you have for snack today? What did they offer you at snack, depending on the age of the child? What did you and Mrs. Jones talk about in school today? That's what you may know what the subject matter is. A lot of this stuff is online, what the teachers are teaching. But if we parents don't know what they're teaching in their classroom or get in to see what units they're teaching, we don't know how to have the conversation with our own child. We need to reinforce what they're teaching and maybe we know how they think a lot of times. Feed that passion and desire from home so that when they get to class, they're like, oh, Mrs. Jones, I was thinking, we were talking about ice. Well, can we talk about dry ice? That's ice. That shows that they're buying in. And then the other students may buy in that they are a person of value as well, because they do have value. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah. So obviously you can tell Kim is very passionate about what she does, very knowledgeable. So if someone needed your services, how would they contact you?
Funny thing you answer that, because I was digging through my resources. It's going to be backwards.
Nice.
No, it's right.
It's perfect.
Perfect.
And call. If I'm with somebody or in a position I can't, leave me a message. Don't hang up, folks. Just say, I need some help with my kiddo. And leave a phone number. That's all you need to say. Sometimes you can't. Or just text, I need help with my child. And then that's all you need to say. And then I'll reach out to you and take it from there and see, what do you need help with, hon? What do you need help with? And this is my passion. This is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. Other things get pushed to the wayside. That is I look at a pile of laundry across the room. But you know what? In our homes, just like your homes, we have to prioritize that laundry is clean. If need be, we know our children sometimes go put that shirt on that they wore yesterday. If it's clean and they're happy, let them wear that bloody shirt. Choose your battles. With our kids, choose your battles. Just like any other dynamics. And honestly, with the teacher sometimes too, choose your battles. Is this one really worth writing an email for? Is this one really worth? And sometimes, it gets your blood boiling, but write it calmly. And my suggestion is write the email 3 times. Write it, step away, go back and read it, write it again. By the 3rd time, a lot of times you're not as angered and your words can be less harsh.
Good advice. That's really good advice.
Yeah. I think we've all learned that one the hard way.
I am so delighted that you are an advocate for the families and people out there. So yes, I'm grateful, and I hope we can chat again. I've got some ideas that we can chat again.
I would love to. My why, I don't think I told my why, besides my siblings. My daughter was late diagnosed as first and foremost, autism. ADHD runs in the family. I mean, it's multi-generational if some folks think back. So ADHD was nothing. Took in a family member who was bipolar. So the manic and mania, depending on, can present similar and have to deal with the same tactics as that mountain, folks. You can use that mountain in a lot of relationships, professional, with your spouse, a lot of relationships. So think about that mountain. But my why begun with my daughter. I got tired of thinking something wasn't right, and the school system would say no, no. And I felt like she was bobbing at times, and other times she was sinking. And I was not going to let my child suffer at my lack of knowledge. And that's what it started, my lack of knowledge. And when I know something, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but when they don't know, I will say and open my highlighted page or get your little tabs and say, according to this, homework. They'll say homework is due by XYZ date, or you get a percentage off. Do you know they can't do that? It's in the guidelines. They cannot do that. So write it in your IEPs. No, gets extended. And some school systems are great. They give them until, as long as they get it in by the end of the grading period, is all cool. But my passion is I got tired of my child suffering through the lack of my knowledge and the system's knowledge.
Yeah.
Systems knowledge.
I think that's how a lot of great advocates are created.
A lot of people I know.
Yeah,
Or we
we're
get burnt
tired of
our child suffer. And in the realm that we're talking about, sometimes it's our child suffer with the law. And that's the last thing that we want, is them to suffer at the hands of the law.
Yeah.
So, and we don't want that.
No.
I don't want that for your kids. So no. And unfortunately, some are already behind bars because intervention is not there, and they have to now do their time.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kim, for our interview. And
you're welcome.
I know we'll be in touch again.
I would love to.
Hopefully, Thank you.
Yes.
We can schedule it.
Yeah. Definitely like, share, subscribe. I will put Kim's contact information if you want to get a hold of her in the description box below. And thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Have a great day, ladies. Thanks for your time, folks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.